Hello, I'm Mullarky, and this is my new book, The Edge of the Silver Sea. It's about a 13-year-old girl called Blair who moves to the remote island of Roscoe with her parents, off the west coast of Scotland, 100 miles from the mainland. They're going to live their dream of opening a bed and breakfast, but all Blair wants is to get back to the mainland, to her friends and her life. So she wishes out loud for a way home, and she is answered. So I'm going to read you that passage from the book. Angry tears prickled at Blair's eyes as she stormed up the hill. She'd only been in this quiet, lonely place a couple of days, but already she felt cut off. Far from her friends and their plans, the only things in the world that made her feel like everything might just be okay. She turned her face into the wind and let it whip her hair away, steal the words from her mouth. "I want to go home," she muttered. "I want to go home, I want to go home." She stopped beside the standing stone. The sky had turned grey as smoke, the colours of the island muted and bleak. "I wish I could go home," she whispered. "It isn't an easy place to get used to," came the reply. Blair almost jumped out of her skin. She wheeled around, certain she'd been alone. The voice belonged to a woman, taller than either of her parents, one of the tallest people Blair had ever seen. She stood with her legs apart and her chin raised. Her wild hair hung almost to her waist, and from the crown of her head rose a pair of antlers? Blair squinted at them, wondering how the woman had fastened them to her head, but they disappeared into her hair at the base. She was smiling at Blair, and while it wasn't an unpleasant smile, there was something unnerving about it. "Thanks," Blair said slowly. "I'll keep that in mind." She skirted around the woman. If there was one thing she knew from growing up in a city, it was never to talk to strangers who showed a bit too much interest in you. Her heart sped up a little as the stranger fell into step beside her. "You wish to go home," the woman said. Even though Blair was walking as quickly as she could, the woman was easily keeping pace, her long strides eating up the ground. "I was just talking to myself." "You should never make a wish carelessly," the woman scolded. Her voice was commanding and resonant. "Didn't your parents tell you that?" "I don't think they believe in that sort of thing." Exasperation was beginning to creep in alongside Blair's panic now. Didn't they understand personal space on this island? "You haven't met my kind before?" the woman asked curiously. Blair could feel the chill of the wind that cut across from the ocean to the west, but when she glanced sidelong at the woman, she saw that she wore only a sleeveless dress, the deep red hue of rust, belted at her waist with cord, ragged around her ankles. She wasn't wearing shoes. Yeah, there were people like you on the mainland," Blair said. Facing forward again, she mouthed, "Weirdos." "Oh," the woman pondered. "I thought they'd all moved on from Carlisle." Blair stopped short. This wasn't right. She turned to the woman, who came to a stop a few feet from her. "How do you know where we're from?" "Word travels fast on a small island," the woman said, with another one of those slightly creepy smiles. It was impossible to guess her age. Though her copper skin was unwrinkled, her cheeks were hollow and her eyes sharp. Her irises were a washed-out electric blue. "I only want to make you an offer," the stranger said. Blair huffed out a breath, unsure what she could say to shake her off. The more the stranger persisted, the more her heart quickened. But then she realized that over the woman's shoulder she could see the misshapen lump of their new house. She felt a stab of relief. "My parents did teach me some things," she said. "Like not to talk to strangers." She marched past the woman in the direction of the house. The woman's voice echoed after her. "You want to go home. I can make your parents pick up and leave with a click of my fingers." Blair hovered over her next step. "Blair," the woman said, so sharply that Blair couldn't help but look. Had she told the woman her name? "Look around you," she commanded. Some part of her wanted to know. Uncertainly at first, Blair glanced from side to side along the slopes of the hill. Everywhere she looked there were deer, some with antlers, some without, old and young, in groups or alone. They were scattered all over the hillside, and every last one of them was looking her way, head raised, eyes fixed on the two of them. "Nothing on Roscoe is what it seems," the woman said. "Granting your wish would be easy."